I'm walking down the street.
I do want to say to Donnie and many of you in this room that over a very long career in this city, all of you have helped me and my colleagues tell the truth and to try to tell.
Get my head up.
I'm South Carolina, so I just
May not look like you.
look at Donnie.
What does this event mean to you, Miss Peggy Moss?
Oh, my heart,
Happy 20th anniversary.
my heart is about loving up on my sisters. Do you know what it feels like to have your sisters in the room? Donnie.
Letting His glory shine through. Dare to be you, dare to be me, and dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. I am beautiful, I am blessed, but not just what you see in the flesh.
The doctor lived next door to the janitor lived to the reverend and the lawyer. We were together. Now we get so high and mighty that you create stress for your society because you don't like poor black folks either. That's a health problem. Get yourself together so I can stop being taking care of geriatric people and get back to pediatrics. I thank you, Donnie, for all you've done. Let's keep doing it for all the more.
I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine through. Dare to be you, dare to be me, dare to be different and unique. I'm gonna be the best me I can be by letting His glory shine.
First name's Donnie, last name's Glover. In it to win it for the long haul, baby. All right, all right, all right. Ladies and gentlemen, I have some breaking news to tell you. This show has been nominated for a regional Emmy by STEM City USA. So you are watching an Emmy-nominated show. Makes the cat feel very, very special. Thank you to Dr. Tyrone Taborn and Career Communications Group for their ongoing support of our efforts. Kelly Cross, I'm gonna need you to cut that camera on. I don't know what you're doing down there. About to bring in Kelly Cross. I wanted to share with you a little bit about, this is Black History Month, and it really makes no sense to skip the most important part to me, just a little bit about how it came about, or at least who helped bring it about. Now, there are a lot of Black historians, a lot of famous people who have contributed so much to Black history, but Dr. Carter Godwin Woodson is the one I'm referencing today. Born December the 19th, 1875 in New Canton, Virginia. He was the father of Black History Week and then months. Give you three facts about, or a couple of facts. He was born to former slaves. He started high school at the age of 20. He was the second African American to earn a doctorate from Harvard, and he's known to have started the last celebration and remembrance of Black history during February. So make sure you check out Dr. Carter G. Woodson and learn a little bit about him. I'm not sure what we got here. Kelly Cross, are you with us? Kelly Cross? Okay. So we are prepared for that. Let me tell you a little bit about tomorrow's event. We have a list of honorees. A list of honorees that I want to share with you, multitasking here. And they include some Lifetime Achievement Awards. Okay, Kelly Cross. Kelly Cross is on and he's off. Okay, here are the awardees for tomorrow. Dr. Tyrone Taborn, we got to give him a Lifetime Achievement Award. And it's very imperative. Let me tell you, if you are in the media or if you know a little bit about media, black media, covering black people, brown people, not mainstream media, black media. Right now, the National Newspaper Publishers Association convention is going on. It's in Puerto Rico, down there where my grandfather was from, Joaquin Calderon. You know that we need black media because black media is going to cover our story in a more holistic fashion than non-black media. It's basic facts. And nobody can tell our story better than us. I mean, it doesn't take much to get on TV and say these people killing each other, but it takes a little more to go on and to bring in some of the nuances. You know, for instance, a lot of times in Black history, they will talk about, you know, a lot of times on the news, they'll talk about the crime that's going on. They'll talk about the corrupt Black elected officials downtown. It's easy to paint a picture that everything wrong with Baltimore is Black people's fault. But then you start raising questions, or at least I do. I raise the question like, well, if every time an election comes around, I'm told that I am supposed to vote Democrat because I'm Black, but then I look around the entire city and find out it's 9-1 Democrat, and then you bring in this concept of the white L, and that's the area from Johns Hopkins University down to the harbor, over to Canton, and then the Black Butterfly, which is East and West Baltimore. So I live in a 9-1 Democratic city, a 2-1 Democratic state, a majority Black city. So that means most Black people are Democrat. And so then I raise the question, well, who's been more helpful to the Black community, Democrats or Republicans? And then I look over at Coppin and I see what Ehrlich, the first Republican in 36 years, and what Hogan has done. And it really begs the question, well, then why are we Democrats? Because it looks like we've been screwed by Democrats my entire life in the city of Baltimore. And if I'm wrong, in my collar's where you belong. But I've seen more effort, more motion under Ehrlich, under Hogan in my community in the past 20 years than by all of the Democrats combined. And maybe I'm just delusional. Maybe I just like doing business with Republicans because they pay. Democrats got a lot of stuff when it comes to that money. They're your friend all the way up until it's time to write that check. Then they'll tell you, I remember one Democratic governor, I'm not calling names this morning. After the campaign, after the election, they said, well, go to the website and fill out the minority. I ain't filling out no damn minority business enterprise application. Give me that damn money. Give me that money. Answer the phone the same way you did during the campaign. I ain't going to no damn website. Give me my damn money. Where the money at? Where's the beef? Like you hook up other white guys, right? White guys get to go on the Maryland Stadium Authority, to get to work down the port, to get, you know, these cushy jobs. And we're supposed to get some damn administrative job, 50, 60, 120 a year. Nah, man, we come for the bag. We want the millions. I'll give you another scenario. Very relevant to the day. The renaming of BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport. The late Delegate Emmett Burns was a key sponsor of that bill to rename the airport BWI Thurgood Marshall after the first Black Supreme Court justice. At the same time of the renaming, there was a $1.8 billion expansion. And what I said publicly is, I don't care if you call it BWI-KKK. Let some Black people get some of that $1.8 billion. But that's just my thinking. You can't just keep blowing us up and not expect us to want. You know, we want filet mignon too, Kelly.
Indeed, Donnie.
We want filet mignon too. We want some of that macaroni, what, lobster, that fancy macaroni. What is it, lobster macaroni? We want some of that foie gras, some of that beef tartare. Don't just give us some damn sirloin. Not that anything's wrong with sirloin, but I see them eating filet mignon. I see them eating the good stuff, the lamb, the veal. They want to give us hot dogs. So I ain't for it. Now, I don't care what your party is. We coming for the bag. We need the money. We need reparations. Going back to the Freedmen's Bank. After slavery was over, they created this bank called the Freedmen's Bank. And they stole all the damn money. Money's supposed to be going to help black people get on their feet after 400, 500 years of chattel slavery. But it didn't work out like that. They went in and stole the money then, and then they brought in Frederick Douglass, kind of like they brought in Barack Obama after George Bush had messed up everything. But anyway, let's get to our guest for today. And again, special thank you to Dr. Tyrone Taborn, Mr. Kelly Cross. Good morning, Kelly. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Donnie. Thank you for having me this morning.
Good deal. So tell them who you are. Who are you?
Kelly Cross, resident of Baltimore for about, I guess about 11 years now. President of the Old Goucher Community Association, been active, very active in a lot of development and community building here in Old Goucher, which is in the center of the city. So if you're familiar with sort of Penn North up to 25th Street, or Penn Station, I'm sorry, up to 25th Street, that's our general area.
Where'd you go to school, Kelly?
I went to Princeton University undergrad, went to the University of Virginia Law School and Bucerius Law School in Hamburg, Germany.
You went to school in Germany. Sie sprechen Sie
I
Deutsch?
did. Ja, ich kann Deutsch. Ich kann ein bisschen Deutsch.
When you were in Germany, did you see any evidence of the Moors?
You know, in Germany, not so much, but actually in Poland, there is the Church of the Black Mary, Czestochowa, that I've visited before.
I didn't know how to pronounce it. Czestochowa. And that's
Czestochowa.
where the shrine of the Black Madonna is, right?
That's correct. Mm-hmm.
And that's where the Pope goes and prays to a black woman as God.
I mean, I suppose that's a way to put it theologically. I won't speak for the Catholics, but I will say that the Pope does go there to pray.
To a black woman.
That's right.
How come we don't know that in this country, Kelly? How come we don't know that the black woman is God?
America's, it's an insular place. We don't necessarily like to get out a whole lot unless it's on some military expedition.
I guess you saw a lot over there going to school in Germany that broadened your perspective.
I did. I saw a lot. And I saw a lot about, it's something I always encourage for young people, but especially young Black people to, because I grew up in Southern West Virginia, small poor town, Beckley in Southern West Virginia. And so for me to be able to get out and see that the world was much bigger than I knew. And it also allows you to start expanding the categories that you feel you have to put yourself in. When you start realizing that the world is a huge place, there's so much history, so many stories, so many ways to slot in your own story and other narratives that have been going on for thousands of years. So yeah, young people seeing more of the world, I think, is critical.
So Kelly, when I think of the 18-year-old young Black man in Baltimore, to me, the very first thing the parents, the mayor, the governor, the president should be doing is get 18-year-olds out of Baltimore. Send them somewhere. Go see something in the world. Your thoughts?
I wouldn't say that's a bad idea. I mean, and frankly, it's happening de facto whether we want it or not. I was looking at the population stats, and in the decade that I've lived here in Baltimore, the city has lost about 70,000 people. So, young people are leaving anyway. Everybody's leaving. The city is in a downward arc. It's shrinking. But I think yes. I think if we had a program that we could pick that the government would subsidize, that would be one of them. Because one of the biggest issues I see in Baltimore that we're suffering from is a lack of exposure, a dearth of new ideas in the city, and that dearth of new ideas in the city is largely a function of the fact that our people, from at all scales, all ages, all demographic groups, and I would say this applies even to our political and business elites in the Baltimore region, they're not very exposed. They don't know what's going on in the world. They don't have the canvas to be able to draw on to create new ideas for the city. So, again, in the decade I've been here, I've seen so many of the same ideas recycled, rehashed, same people cycling through different offices. And for all intents and purposes, we're at best in a standstill, and more realistically in a significant decline.
That was a polite way of saying you can't stand these damn people because they're so damn non-progressive. You always have a polite way of saying what I'm a little, I guess, what's the word, crass? Just come on. They suck. They suck. They suck.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, I've seen hundreds of millions of dollars sunk into asinine projects here in Baltimore over this last decade, the decade that I've been here. I've seen us cycle through 4 different mayors in this short amount of time. I have seen folks in and out of prison, sentences, indictments. I think, and one thing that it made me realize is that fundamentally, I don't think that politics is going to be the solution for Baltimore. I think doing things outside of the political apparatus is one of the key things that we can focus on.
Wait a minute. Now, I know you're intellectual, Princeton, what's the school in Germany?
Bucerius.
Yeah, that. But aren't you optimistic? I mean, I got a bald head, you got a bald head, the governor, Westmore, Rhodes Scholar, Johns Hopkins. Aren't we optimistic? I mean, he's the state. Aren't we optimistic? I mean, shouldn't that lend us hope that maybe we can get another Westmore? Because to me, Barack Obama, the whole Barack Obama is like a part 1. It's not until the second one comes in, just like Jackie Robinson. Okay, they let Jackie Robinson in there, but are you going to let in Satchel Paige? You going to let in Josh Gibson? You going to let in the other brothers? Or just only for certain brothers?
I mean, I think that let's say I'm optimistic about Wes's administration, Governor Moore's administration. I'm optimistic, cautious but optimistic. In terms of the city as a whole, I'm not optimistic, at least with the current trajectory. I think we've got to stop with some of the Baltimore boosterism I see constantly. A lot of this, and I remember this was a constant refrain for our previous mayor, or 2 previous mayors ago, Catherine Pugh, who felt that Baltimore just had an image problem. And if we somehow, quote unquote, change the narrative around Baltimore, the city would turn around. So you'll have people going out blaming things like The Wire, things like bad media portrayals. So they're not covering positive stories. Well, the fact is, the negativity and the stories of violence and drug dealing and desperation that we see in the media is actually an accurate reflection of a lot of the city. A large portion of Baltimore City is that. And going around trying to put our heads in the sand and, cover our ears to pretend that everything is good and we just got to change a couple things in the media and all will move better for Baltimore. That's totally denying the reality of what's going on in the streets of this city right now.
As much as I hate Fox's characterization, they have a black guy they bring on, and I always reference, he does the runaway slave report. He's the guy that comes on, black cop, and he tells about all of the warrants, all of the highly sought after criminals in the city of Baltimore, and generally they're all black. And I wonder, what type of black man goes on TV to give the runaway slave report? And he never has any white guys. I mean, like, black people do all of the wrong. So the media is problematic because I never see them target like Donald John Trump. Donald John Trump is the biggest traitor in American history, and he should be under prison. But America gives him white privilege, and they put him on television and let him influence the upcoming election. Go figure. Had he been a black man, had there been black people climbing the walls of the Capitol on January 6th, everybody believes they would have been mowed down with machine guns. No questions asked. And it's this unevenness that rocks our world. We have not dealt with the original sin, so it's complicated.
It's complicated. And I would say, in terms of how the media portrays things, I'm not going to say that there's no impact, that it doesn't matter at all. But what I would say is that for Baltimore City, at our most local level, our problems in Baltimore are not the media. Our problems are self-inflicted. They're problems that our elites and our leaders here do not have the right ideas or new ideas. And I think the media story, the media narrative will change when the city truly begins to change, and that hasn't happened yet.
Kelly, there's a buzz term. It's floating around in different circles. It's called diversity, equity, and inclusion. What in the hell is that?
It's another one of these meaningless neoliberal corporatist terms. It's another one of these terms that is there to give black people, give people across a number of different socioeconomic strata that aren't really represented in elite systems, a sense that they're going to have a place somewhere at the table. We're going to pull out a special chair for you over here in this little corner of the table, but you got to finally have a seat here. Be thankful, clap your hands, and say thank you and bless you for letting me in the dining room at the table. I mean, that's what these programs are. When you're coming in under a special program, or you're coming in because someone is letting you sit at the table, that means that you're not coming in with your own power. And in my view, having a seat at that table means that you actually either opened up, busted in the door yourself and picked which chair you're going to sit at that table, or that you went to another room, you found another room and decked it all out and created a table for yourself. It's one or the other, but it's not. Our diversity, equity, and inclusion office is going to, mandate that there are at least a seat or two here at this table for you to sit at, because that's powerless.
Kelly, you mentioned that our approaches have not been working. Can you give an example?
Well, one thing I would say when we talk about sort of the drug dealing in the city and how much of that is fueling the homicides that we're seeing in Baltimore. One of the reasons you see that is because there are no capacities or few capacities for Black people to build small scale wealth in Baltimore. It's extremely difficult. And it's extremely difficult for things that aren't necessarily obvious, things that you wouldn't see, they aren't really in the media narrative, but they're things like our zoning laws in Baltimore. Baltimore was the home, the birthplace of redlining. And that continues to this day. So when you mentioned earlier, Donnie, the white L and the black butterfly, if you ever go and pull up a zoning map of Baltimore, how is the city zoned? What activities are allowed to take place in different parts of the city? You will see that the only mixed use zoning, and by mixed use, I mean zoning that allows you to put in businesses, residential, small scale commercial, larger scale commercial, the stuff that really generates revenue and wealth for a community. Mixed use zoning is really only in the white L of Baltimore. It's really only in this Charles Street strip. It's down in the waterfront, the harbor. It's this long zone of C1, C2, C3 zoning that goes all the way through this white L. When you're looking at Black East and West Baltimore, the black butterfly, you notice that it's zoned almost exclusively residential, with the exception of some commercial strips around things like North Avenue. And so just at that level, the ability, say, to open up a little store in your house and run something out of it, get a little restaurant or a bar off the ground to have a little side income, those opportunities exist in white Baltimore. They do not exist in black Baltimore. And that's at a legal level.
I've never heard it broken down like that, Kelly. You're saying that they can make money in the white L, but they're not the same opportunities don't exist in the black community. That we have been fully relegated as a consumer part, a consumer segment. That's all we do. We're here to buy and consume, not to make money, not to be of the merchant class, just to consume. And nationally, we are what they call super users. Black people spend more money. All you got to do is look at St. Patrick's Day. Black people spend more money on St. Patrick's Day than white people. And we're not Irish. But we love to celebrate a damn holiday.
Yeah. No, I would say that. And I would say that that's one example. There are so many examples. I remember, Donnie, when I was campaigning for city council and I was knocking doors in East Baltimore. And one of the, out of all the things that are happening in East Baltimore, were happening at the time, the homicides, the issues with schools, the poverty. One of the primary concerns I heard knocking on doors was people saying, we would love a sit-down restaurant somewhere in our neighborhood, somewhere nearby in East Baltimore. You could go blocks and blocks and blocks and blocks East Baltimore and only come across maybe a fried chicken joint where you could stand up and eat something. A couple of little snack bars.
Or get shot.
A couple little corner stores. And people just kept saying, we would love a sit-down restaurant. And so that got me thinking, it's part of a strategy we pursued here in Old Goucher. I realized that there has been a liquor license, a moratorium on the creation of what are called new BD7, that's tavern liquor licenses, in the city since 1968. Basically, since the King riots, there was a moratorium placed on the creation of new BD7s in Baltimore since 1968 that effectively ended up meaning that a lot of the black social establishments in East and West Baltimore were gradually shut down. With no liquor licenses, there was no ability to regenerate them. The only places that maintained liquor licenses were working class white neighborhoods. So Canton, Federal Hill, Hamden, Fells Point, those places retain liquor licenses. So when you're going to the level of, say, you want just a sit-down restaurant in your neighborhood, you have to understand one of the big money generators for sit-down restaurants is the ability to serve alcohol. You're getting your profit margins on beer, liquor, drinks, which is what you see in all those restaurants that they've got down in the waterfront. They've got alcohol service. Without that, it's very difficult to make a restaurant run. So when you've removed liquor licenses and the ability for those to exist in black neighborhoods, for instance, you've suddenly removed the ability for small scale restaurants to get off the ground where you can make a fish sandwich and get a beer.
So, Kelly, I'm going to say something and it may offend somebody. I don't know, but Baltimore's in the world of trouble. When Nick Mosby was running for mayor and then running for city council president, one thing he said that just stuck with me, I never forgot. He said, and this is when he was running for office, he said, I've managed millions and millions and millions of dollars. I remember hearing him say that. In other words, trust me because I know how to manage money. I want to know, how come what you just explained as it relates to why we are impoverished in the Black community versus why in the white L they keep on flowing, why don't more of our city council people, and all of them, how come they don't talk this language? How come they don't talk about wealth creation? Because when he would say, hey, I've managed millions and millions of dollars, it just made me think, you know, he'll be good for business. But I see Black businesses struggling. I see Black businesses being disrespected, being fined, being shut down. I'm sure white businesses get shut down, but I'm looking at my community. I want to know, how come there are no damn vegetables in West Baltimore? And I know there isn't a Black person to provide it.
You know, Donnie, I think it's I think it's multifaceted. I think we have a tendency to be focusing on huge macro issues in Baltimore, the really big picture things that everyone is paying attention to. You know, homicides, the homicide rate is one. I mean, folks love to look at that big picture number, and they're thinking our solutions that we try to present to these things are often very linear. So people say, okay, well, we've got a crime problem. That must mean we need a bigger police budget. And they make this correlation between policing
does it every night on TV
and crime. But the fact is, we're spending more now on policing than we were 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And I'm already accounting for inflation with that. And we're having worse results. So I think one of the issues, Donnie, is that we've gone into sort of almost a victim charity mentality, the way we look at how city government is supposed to run, what a city is for, what city government, state government exists for. We've forgotten that the fundamental obligation of a city government, in my opinion, is to foster wealth creation. That's why cities exist. People don't, come together and live in large numbers and in density just because they want to. They do it because it creates opportunities to build wealth, to make business relationships, to export, to import. That's what Baltimore was built on. That's what all cities were built on. And so when we've forgotten that that's the fundamental reason that a city exists, you've already started to go down the wrong path. Another issue I'll say I've noticed in Baltimore, in Maryland in general, but in Baltimore specifically, is the over-regulation. The city is regulated to within an inch of its life. And so when you have regulations that are put in place, you automatically, through that process, are putting politicians in as gatekeepers for every different aspect of the business cycle. I see it with, some of the small businesses we've worked with to get off the ground here. The zoning regulations, permitting issues, building license stuff, the number of inspectors. And at each of those points along the way, there are a million things that can go wrong and often do. And then you've got to engage your councilman, a state legislator. So when you start seeing that that's the dynamic that we've built up here systemically, you start to realize why there is so much opportunity for corruption. Because politicians stand as gatekeepers at each of these, portions of the life cycle for a business. So there's an opportunity to pay this person off, give this person a little money, give this person's cousin, a little consulting gig.
Or get their own relatives, the nepotism. I hear one generation saying, oh, look at that older generation. They got all of their family's job. All of their family works at Johns Hopkins. All of their family works in city government. Then the young politician gets in there and does the same thing. His sister got a job. His brother got a job. I'm like, well, that's the same. That's called pedagogy of the oppressed, Paulo Freire. The same thing you accused them of, now you're doing. So you're the same thing. And they were adamant about getting the older people like, no, whomever out. I don't want to call names, but they were adamant. They got to go. They got to go. Only for your, I haven't cussed all day. We're going to not cuss. To have them do the same damn thing. What's the difference? Insanity.
Well, I think the way you started the podcast, Donnie, there's I'll say I'm a Democrat. I'm a lifelong Democrat, and we'll always work to ensure that our party is actually representing its core constituency and what should happen in America. But I think that you start to have problems when you have a uniparty system, whether that's at the city level or the state level. The fact that there can be, and one of the interesting things you find in a sort of a uniparty system, like I found in Baltimore, is that yes, everybody is quote unquote Democrat. They're under the Democrat umbrella, but you'll find within that Democrat umbrella folks who are further right, more conservative, especially as it comes to Black people and Black wealth creation, than the Republicans I knew growing up in West Virginia.
Yes, these are the most Republican Democrats you've ever met in your life. The ass might as well put on a Trump t-shirt.
I have seen, had conversations and seen things that were, you wouldn't have expected that seeing on a major East Coast city. And people like to talk about West Virginia and where we are. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I think it's better in a lot of ways in terms of how, what the Black community is able to achieve and is like there than what I'm seeing here in Baltimore. So we've got this party system that's a problem. We've got this over-regulation that's a problem. And so when you combine the two, it's a toxic mix that is really stifling low-level Black small-scale Black creativity. And I would say, Donnie, we should be in a position in Baltimore where you should be able to, let me go back to this restaurant analogy, because I like this restaurant thing. It's something that we've worked with here in the neighborhood. So they put a prohibition on the creation of BD7 liquor licenses. Now you can get, which is the great tavern license, the one that allows you to do everything, but they also do issue what are called restaurant licenses. So if you are serving food and you're going to have sit-down location, you can get a restaurant license in Baltimore City, still, restaurant liquor license. But the requirements they placed on that are so astronomical. In the 46th district, Fells Point, Canton, some of those requirements can run upwards of $500,000 that you have to have invested in your business to be able to get a restaurant license. In the rest of the city, you have to have invested $250,000 in the business, plus have a minimum of, I think it's 50 seats, so it's got to be a fairly large place. So again, you're talking about getting a small scale spot. If you're in Deep East Baltimore, you can find a building for $50,000 and pull together another $50,000 to renovate it and turn it into something. You do that, you're still not going to hit that $250,000 threshold you had to hit to get your restaurant liquor license. So it's a lot of these hidden things we have in Baltimore where we're putting regulations in, they look objective, but the objective criteria you have to meet to get the entitlement is well above what people in your own community could ever afford.
So like, it's almost like this cannabis distribution and Blacks trying to get a cannabis license.
Yes. Yeah.
You got to have, what, 10 million to get in the game?
I don't know the number, but I know that was an issue with the first round went out. And
not just in Baltimore. I've learned of the same thing in New York City. I want to get to something that you've talked about in the past. When you were in Europe, you told me that they don't do a lot of tearing down of buildings. You told me that instead, they work with what they have to make it better. Can you tell me about that? I think you know what I'm alluding to.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it goes to this. So in Baltimore, we have demolished so much of the city, so many beautiful buildings, historic buildings. We've just taken the tack that it's better to get rid of them in hopes that there's going to be some big, massive redevelopment that comes down the pike. One person I love to read who talks about this is Jane Jacobs. So she was a major urbanist, American urbanist from the 1950s, 1960s. She wrote a book, The Death and Life of Great American Cities. And in that book, she discussed the concept that she calls the introduction of cataclysmic money. And cataclysmic money means some large institution, some big government program, big agency suddenly dumping an astronomical amount of money into a city, into a neighborhood, with the hopes that there's going to be this big top-down rejuvenation of that community. What you typically find happens with that is the exact opposite. Those big influxes of money all at one time tend to make neighborhoods worse, tend to have unintended negative consequences. And so when you look at sort of how gentrification has occurred in cities around the country, and even in Baltimore, it's typically in that very predictable cycle. We're going to let things deteriorate, disintegrate to virtually nothing. We're even going to have the state subsidy dollars come in to demolish neighborhoods, to get rid of places, to create new tracts of open land. The state's going to subsidize that, and then we're going to wait for new capital partners with cataclysmic money who are going to have big, massive visions for whole swaths of the city to come in with land that's been effectively subsidized by the state because of the demolitions, to someday come in and rebuild. And I think the European approach to this tends to be, again, an incremental one. We're not waiting for a huge swath of cataclysmic money to come into neighborhoods, but instead we're going to make it easy for this guy on this corner to have open up his little market. He's going to have his little market here. He's going to renovate, his little building, the little building beside it. They're going to renovate. That might be your hair studio, your salon. Just the notion of going along and working with the buildings that you got, instead of waiting for some big government subsidy and big program and grant making institution to come in, demolish, build something new and fix all your problems. It never works that way. And it doesn't benefit Black people when it does happen that way.
Kelly, why won't you run for office?
Donnie, I think, as I said at the beginning, because I fundamentally feel now that politics is not the solution in Baltimore yet. I think there will come a point where the politics can really start to make an impact. But the truth is, the politics and the political discourse that we have in Baltimore also are being had because that's who the people of Baltimore are electing. We're electing these people, or not electing by folks not voting, but we're putting people into office to have certain political conversations. And to be frank, a lot of the conversations that need to be had to move Baltimore forward are ones that even the people of Baltimore aren't ready to have yet. And I've seen this in a lot of my conversations with folks, pastors, preachers, establishment people in Black Baltimore who, say, and I believe deep down, want to see the best for the city. But when you start telling them the things are going to have to change and that they're not going to be comfortable with or have not seen before, then the fear strikes. And you see time and again those people supporting the same sorts of politics that have not gotten us anywhere, even though they keep saying they want Baltimore to be in a better spot. So I think it's going to have to be somewhat of a generational shift. I think people are going to have, the city is probably going to have to empty out more significantly so that a lot of these new ideas can start coming to the fore. But some of the stuff that has to happen in Baltimore is really radical, and I'm not sure that people are ready for that.
How radical? Right now, where I live is Sandtown, across from Upton, up the street from Harlem Park. The city planning department wants to take Fremont Avenue, which runs parallel to Pennsylvania Avenue. They want to widen the sidewalks, narrow the street to calm traffic. Now, that's what the white guy at planning said. The way I see it, you're getting rid of parking. You're creating space for bike lanes. And the thing is, I've been living in this city my whole life and nobody gave a rat's bottom if I got hit by a car while riding a bike. but now they got bike lanes across North Avenue,
Yep.
slowing up traffic right at North and Mount Royal, and not one damn bike in sight. But every day cars are backed up, increasing emissions, but somebody got some federal dollars for it, and so that's just the way it is.
You know, Donnie, I think these kinds of conversations are complicated because
The planning
in theory,
people, let me just say this: the planning people don't live here. They haven't
no.
even been here. They put a camera up. They put a camera up on the corner, and they come back and say, "Well, we have data that suggests we need to calm traffic there." They wanted to take out 3 streetlights on Fremont Avenue, remove them, and put in, I guess, roundabouts or 4-way stop signs. And we're like, dude, you're going to get somebody killed. But then you realize they're not doing this planning for us.
Right.
And then you like insulted and you want to smack the puppy crap out of them.
Well, that's what I think. This is actually a very good example, Donnie, because so I agree in theory with that plan on Fulton. I agree with that in theory because I think those are the types of interventions that need to happen to create a wealth creation base. However, the way I've seen it gone about in the city is exactly to your point, which is that there's a general recognition that when those types of plans start coming into place, it's not for the people who are there. And it's not for, I'll let you say it, Donnie, but yes. I mean, it's not for us. I mean, that's fundamentally what it's about. We
So
know
it's
that.
an insult with a bunch of people from planning come to your community and say, "Hey, you don't like this? This is state of the art." Oh, Kelly. And then they'll bring 2 big 6-foot black guys who go to Morgan State's planning school, and you're like, and they're saying, "Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's good. You should do this." And we're like, slow down, Pam. Slow down. Pump your brakes. Did y'all bring him in here to intimidate me and these old ladies? Now I got to school a youngin'. I got to first make a phone call. "Hey, Black Stevie, come on around here. We might need a little sergeant at arms in the room."
Well, I think what it's about is that you can have an idea. Just because you have an idea that is right in theory doesn't mean that you get to go in and tell other people that that's the idea that's going to be implemented. And you also don't get to roll into communities where you haven't built up a prior relationship. I mean, and that's what I'm saying constantly with, again, one thing that we're very focused on in Old Goucher is the tree canopy. We think urban trees are critical for, a beautiful neighborhood, a livable neighborhood. But the difference I think we had is that we lived in this neighborhood and we're actually out doing the work ourselves with our neighbors. And over time, convincing our neighbors to participate and getting over the resistance that they had to some of these things over time. What I see here, and to your point, Donnie, is that you can have an idea that ostensibly would be good, that actually would be good for these communities, but be implementing it with the express purpose that it not be for those people. So it's one of these things where you can have competing things happening at the same time. Now, one thing I'll say to that, Donnie, is I think, and a thing a lot of the Black community is going to have to start to understand if we're going to really be serious about wealth creation is the amount of money we're spending on private automobiles, on cars in this community. And I've seen some statistics around this. And the average Marylander is spending about $10,000 per year per automobile that they own. Now, when you start looking at the wealth gap, income levels, wealth levels between Black and white families, you imagine a household, a Black family with spending that much, $20,000 per year, on average for those 2 cars, versus the white family spending $20,000 per year on those same 2 automobiles. That's going to be a massive difference when that Black family might only be bringing in $50,000, $60,000 a year, and perhaps doesn't even own their own home or doesn't have any generational wealth that's coming to them, versus that white family that might be bringing in $85,000, $90,000 per year and has some generational wealth and inherited wealth that's coming in. That's a big difference. And one thing I'm seeing that's so problematic for me is how many Black people still want to buy into the notion of white supremacy. Like they recognize, well, I've got this identity, the X, Y, and Z problems, but at the end of the day, they really still just want the same picket fence house in the suburbs with the 2 cars and the private school. That's the dream. And the same sorts of aesthetics that go along with that. Despite, and perhaps a lot of people don't recognize, despite the fact that model is not wealth building for Black people, and it never will be. So I'm thinking about this all the time in terms of when I'm advocating for walkable neighborhoods, less car-centric neighborhoods. Imagine what it means when that Black family has everything that they need, their jobs, their housing, et cetera, within a short distance, even within walking distance, what it means for that Black family to be able to save on one of those cars a year, save that $10,000 over a decade, Donnie. Just having taken away one of those cars out of that household, that's $100,000 over that decade that family now has saved. If it's in the bank account, that's now wealth building for that family.
Well, Kelly, I have to interject that an upwardly mobile Black woman making 60 plus a year is not giving up her damn car for you, for old Goucher, for the city of Baltimore, for the red, white, and blue. And if you think you're going to be able to date a Black woman and not have a car, your ass is in for a rude awakening. Also, if you have kids, who is going to put their kids on a bicycle?
Well, see, this is the thing, Donnie. You raised the right point.
And we have the dumbest subway system. I just wanted to add that. We have the dumbest subway system in all the world.
Well, that's why you got to look at these things collectively, because again, I'm not talking about doing the car restrictions and bike lane stuff in isolation. One of the reasons that we're stuck in this wealth destruction phase in Baltimore is because the things like transit, as you mentioned, that could have really been something to connect the city and build it up. Our transit lines don't connect deliberately. We've got a light rail line.
It's deliberate.
That goes down and hits State Center, almost does, but doesn't quite. You got to walk across this thing to get to this subway.
Then you get run over by a train.
And then you get, right, that goes to places that nobody really even needs to be. And then the main system of public transit that we have in Baltimore is the bus system. And the bus system is frankly a joke. I mean, the buses are old, dirty, decrepit. They're bouncing and jiggling up and down. They're full. If you're on North Avenue or Greenmount, these buses are full. They're miserable to sit in.
And
so
people shooting dope in public now, urinating on the trains in public. I mean, Kelly, the level of disrespect is, I've never seen this behavior in Baltimore, ever. The level of respect is straight out the window. God rest the soul of the young lady who died yesterday from the shooting over the weekend. But the young people in the shooting, that's indicative of a much larger isolationism. Y'all stay over there, y'all kill each other over there, do everything you want, just don't bring it over here. You bring it over here.
You have to remember,
we're gonna lock you up faster than a Baltimore speed camera.
What you have to remember too, Donnie, when you think about the Jim Crow era, so much of what happened in Jim Crow, segregation, it wasn't just about maintaining white purity. It wasn't just about somehow making sure that there was no miscegenation, or that people weren't mixing, or that there was a clear sense of superiority, even though all these things were there. It was, and I would say one of the biggest reasons that it existed was an out of sight, out of mind scenario for most of white America. Most of white America not wanting to, even if you lived in Montgomery, Alabama, and you're living in these communities, the same in some of my communities in Southern West Virginia, white folks didn't want to see the oppression that was happening. Because I think fundamentally most people are decent people. most people, if they see something that is just so out of whack and they actually can understand it, will be at least uncomfortable with it. And some people may want that to change. But, you know, one of the issues around Jim Crow segregation was about ensuring that mainstream white America didn't have to see the day-to-day injustices and indignities that were going on in Black communities. And I think that that has continued over to this day in a place like Baltimore. There is extreme poverty here. We had a very good friend visiting us last year from Africa, was here and brought her mother over. And this was there for the mom's first time in Baltimore. She had been back and forth a little bit on a project here, the daughter. And the daughter just said to the mom, she said, "Mommy," and these are folks, they live in, you know, in East Africa. She's like, "Mommy, I know we've got some really bad neighborhoods and poor neighborhoods in our country." She said, "But I've never seen anything like I saw in West Baltimore." This was for Preakness, because they were up here, they came over for Preakness. And so I think, Donnie, we've gotten used to a lot of this stuff in Baltimore. We've gotten accustomed to it. We've gotten numb to it. The city it's important. That's another reason it's so important to go away and come back, because to go away and take that breath and come back and just look around, you can realize the true devastation that this city is in. And I don't even remember where I was going with that, but
well, I'll tell you, I was in Africa and I was shocked to see the Chinese doing all the damn development. So she might not have seen this level of exploitation, but it's one thing getting exploited across the Atlantic. It's another thing getting a home invasion in Africa and getting 53 or 54 countries colonized. And then the Chinese got 13 police stations in South Africa. So be careful pointing fingers, because 3 come to head.
No, I agree. But
by the way, since you're talking, can I get my damn gold? Because I was told I get a bag of gold if I survive the transatlantic slave trade and 500 years of American oppression. Ask her where's my plotter at.
I'll take my bag too.
I'm gonna grow coffee.
Yeah, Donnie. But look, man, I think the issues that we have in Baltimore, for me, are primarily wealth creation. Primarily, how do we get around some of the overregulation that we have in the city? And then also, Donnie, we got to, I think, look internally and remember and think to ourselves, when we're leaving the city, when Black people are leaving Baltimore, that's part of it. And I don't want to sound too conspiracy theories about it.
It's not as all gentrification, it's abandonment.
It's abandonment. And we've seen this cycle play out in other American cities. So as Black folks leave these neighborhoods, who are leaving right now primarily,
the white
going to
ladies
they're moving in, and this is the dynamic that you see, and what I fear for the Black community is a lot of our folks are moving out to the suburbs right at the time when markets begin to change. So that wealth increase that we saw in Baltimore County, Anne Arundel County, some of those places, those suburban areas, the new homes built in the 2000s, 2010s.
Overpriced prefab homes.
Overpriced prefab homes. Suddenly, you got a bunch of folks who sold what actually is valuable real estate in the city, exchange it for crap out in the burbs. Now those the children of those white folks who were out there are now moving back. And I think we're hitting a rock bottom in the city population-wise. But I would say in probably 20 years, maybe even sooner, maybe 11, 15 years, the way we're going, this is probably going to be a majority white city with a lot of neighborhoods that were Black, where folks left, and that stuff is now 2x, 3x the value of what you're seeing out in the suburbs that these people that Black folks are moving to right now.
There's one last thing I have to ask you. Of course, it's 10 o'clock. But when I think of, I'd love to get your thought on this one last question. Baltimore has one of, if not the highest percentages of Black elected officials in the nation. The state of Maryland, we have a pretty good percentage statewide. We're 30% of the state. Now we have a Black governor. We have a Black attorney general. We have a Black treasurer. We have a Black speaker of the House. And we have one more of them. Okay. And with all of that, should we be making more progress, or does it go back to your initial thesis that politics just can't do it? What's the excuse now?
Yes, politics alone can't do it. So I think that's one of the key things. But we've also just seen the Tyree Nichols case. I mean, so the fact that just because someone's black, I mean, just because you got black elected officials, just because you got black this or that, that doesn't mean, right? That doesn't mean that the results that you're going to see are the ones that you need or that you're looking for. So frankly, when I'm looking at politics, I'm looking at people. I am looking at who the people are, what they've done, what they believe, what they can accomplish. And even if we don't see eye to eye on something, I would rather have someone who's in office and effective and who I can persuade and convince, but who can actually implement policy, than having someone who just spouts out a bunch of good slogans, but has no managerial skills, no ability to really engage with their colleagues or to politic for their constituencies.
Well, I'm not a fan of Odette Ramos. She closed off the access road for this historically black community called Hose Heights, founded by a former slave named Grandison Ho, and she sided with Roland Park to cut that now black and white community off. She worked for years to get on the city council. She got in there and she betrayed the black community. Odette Ramos, thumbs down. Okay. How can people get in touch with you, Kelly Cross?
You can go to my Facebook, Instagram, Kelly Cross for Baltimore.
Oh, you are running. You are running for mayor.
I'm not running. I am not running. No, I'm not. But
this is Kelly Cross for Baltimore. That's a political name.
It's a political name. It's one from my old campaign, but I keep the pages open. So if folks want to ever reach out, that's an easy way to get in touch.
So no fundraisers coming up?
Not for me, but you never know. We can see where things are in a few months.
Oh, okay. Well, that leaves a little bit of optimism. Okay. But if you tell Odette Ramos, tell her she need to go and apologize to those beautiful old ladies up there in Hose Heights, because they don't like her ass. Okay. Have a great day, Kelly. My name's Dr. Glover. Have a great day. Good morning, world.